Hey everybody, I hope the audio is nice and clear. Last video, I was outside at night and it was very quiet. And if you didn't turn up the volume all the way, you probably weren't able to hear me. And I apologize, but there's also something special about the ambiance of that evening. So I am going to keep it up there on the channel, and you can put subtitles on and read along with the transcript on the screen if that's helpful. So I am laying down, resting my back. I am pad that I have in front of me here. So, all right, I'm going to try to explain the arc of this thought process as it began and how it's been developing. I've been wanting to make a video on this for a very long time, and I've mentioned this topic and more details about the idea to a couple of people on different phone calls. And I'm just really happy to be able to take this time and share the whole spectrum of the thoughts that I'm having. Let's see. It was a couple of years ago when I was on with Mark, the interview for Forever Conscious Research Channel on his My Awakening series. And I think I mentioned during that interview that I remember listening to a Robert Monroe interview where he was talking about Loosh and how there is, in my understanding now, after hearing what he did say, there is a misunderstanding that Loosh is strictly negative emotions, fear, um, hatred, lust, etc., lower level emotions that are being harvested or fed off of. But it's actually heightened emotions all across the board. Any spikes of emotions that are not centered and become incoherent in the field that we have. Each person has not only a biochemical composition, but also a electromagnetic and bioelectrical composition that is invisible, but it has an effect and an influence. We have our own spheres of influence, and that's also measured by Heart Math Institute, the electromagnetic frequency of the heart at different types of emotional um, periods of rest, heightened emotions, integrated emotions, all the different ranges of frequency from low to high octaves of different types of emotions and feelings can all be measured. We each have a field around us that reaches to about 6 feet around us, and we can cultivate the integrity and um, the stability, the coherence of our fields to have a stronger, you could think of it like a force field around us, or something that also is a really powerful ripple or influence in a strong, I guess it could be, if you wanted to create a sphere of influence that was a particular type of frequency or emotion, that you could probably work on that. However, I find that the cultivation of our biofield that is based in uh, more of a serene, calm, collected, stoic, not in that you're bypassing emotions, but you are able to have a grounded, very strong, centered space, sphere, orb of influence, which helps your physical body to stay healthy. It helps the nervous system, it helps the circulation, it helps the organs, it helps your circuitry of your body. All of the different components run more smoothly together in a more powered up way, I guess. More of your innate capacities could come back online if you hadn't experienced them before when you take some time to do some work on these fields around us. Okay, so talking about Lush, back to Lush, and I've always thought of it like how, I've been kind of trying to have it on the back burner over the past couple of years, wondering how could emotional discharge be harvested. And so it's interesting after spending about the past year familiarizing myself with the Taurus field and how it applies to every scale of our lives and is the base fundamental design of the unfolding of the material world, the energetic, the metaphysical. It really is like the base architecture of this realm is the Taurus field. And so when you learn how the convergence and the divergence, that there's a dielectric plane in the center where the space of inertia or the 0 point is where creation happens from. And if you are able to responsibly attend to this technology or architecture of yours in of your physical body, that it can become a beneficial component while you're here living this life. And you can learn how to apply the dynamics of it into all the different layers of the way you can think about living in life. And I have a lot of videos that I've done over the past 4 months that you can go and listen to and see how my thoughts have been developing around that. I look at it like this: the human body is like a circuit board, a battery, and there's charge, and there's negative and positive charge, and it's flowing all around you. And depending on these emotional spikes that we may or may not have, will determine the integrity or the coherency of the field. And if you are unable to express emotions without centering yourself, and there's fear, there's sadness, there's depression, there's chaos, anxiety, even just manic excitement or just ungrounded emotional spikes that will create tears and rips in the layers of your field. And that is where the positive and negative charges discharge from, escape from. And so what's interesting is that a lot of us have been talking about um, loosh harvesting in terms of invisible entities like the archons or um, just dark forces, etc., that we can't see, or the that this realm is run on our energetic emotional discharge as loosh, as an energy source. But what I found in realizing more is that people that are actually living are doing a majority of this siphoning and vampirism to each other. And when someone doesn't have a strong connection to their spirit or a strong, coherent field around them, those leaks and tears and that lower octave maneuvering and vehicle is easily commandeered by those parasitic ethereal forces as well that will come in and make it even harder for you to rise above that lack mentality, that ego, that fragile, fighting for to be the predator or the hierarchical, the one that's just taking to ensure that they are not losing out. But, inadvertently, we could say that more for one person is more for another, not less for another is more for another, or less for me is more for you, or whatever. It's a more is more. It's not less, not a lack mentality. It's a building mentality that is possible. Okay, so we have these fields around us that are containing and housing our physical body, and they are these layers of different fields with different frequencies that have different effects. And we affect each other, we affect our environment, the environment has effect on us. Everything has these orbs of influences, and when you are in the vicinity of another orb of influence, those two frequencies will either be discordant or harmonizing with each other. And then there's sort of a leveling out to find the common balance. And you can decide whether you want to stay in that combination. You feel like you've been able to maintain your strength in this dynamic, or if you're losing charge, um, and you can't control that, then it's probably wise to distance yourself from that dynamic. I'm also realizing that our spirit, that is, to me, feels like a light, an ember that's in my central, maybe that 0 point in the dielectric plane of the torus. That is the main component of the energy center. And in the center of that, the 0 point, the singularity of self, is a portal, I think, that can connect when you meditate and contemplate and sit in that area, visualize and feel and sense that that's what you're doing. It really does open up a whole new territory and reality for you to connect to other um, realms of possibilities for many reasons. So, the spirit that comes down into the vessel at birth, when the female body is in the receptive mode for conception or is beginning that process, whether she's conscious of it or not, her electromagnetic field is a very strong vortex pulling in charge and energy and light on an ethereal and physical level. So when the spirit comes into the body and is integrated into the form, and begins to animate and read the information in the DNA and the design to assist with the unfolding of that being as it's evolving and growing until whatever it says to stop or to make a different direction or whatever. It's just following directions. I think more in life, we have opportunities to have more of our spirit housed and contained within our physical vessel. And that's up to the condition of our field, of our biofield. So if we are able to maintain strength and coherence and a strong integrity of our architecture, our system, our physiological system, it creates a conducive environment for more spirit to reintegrate into the form. There's a connection that we have, and people can lose connection to their spirit while we're here. You don't need to have the complete connection here to keep living because of subconscious programming, the ego, the habit, muscle memory, the body. Just is on autopilot. A lot of people are just on autopilot and they really don't have a lot of their spirit here. It's withdrawn back to the larger spiritual self that cannot be corrupted, that does not die. Either more or less comes into your vessel while you're here. And some people say NPCs. Maybe those people just have lost the connection to their spirit and they don't have a strong conduit to be able to reach and to receive more of that. And so they're just running on autopilot. And then the individuals that are doing the work to cultivate a conducive housing or space for more spirit to integrate throughout the life. Sometimes you can have great awakenings where you feel like you've been doing specific work or not, and then boom, a whole lot of your spirit has come back into your body, and you are then aware of that and can feel it, and it's incredible. I've had many periods of my life where that's been evident to me. I want to go back to the emotional discharge and the leaking of the fields and the poor quality of one's ethereal architecture. It makes it easier to be hijacked. It makes it easier to operate continuously from lower level, fragile ego, animal type behavior that is predatorial, narcissistic, parasitic. That's where all of that type of energy and frequency lays. And that's a certain type of mentality. That's a certain type of operation. That's a certain type of individual that goes around that isn't able to maintain the connection to their own spirit. And so they don't have the wellspring of inspiration for themselves. Instead of being inspired by what they hear, will attempt to copy and keep it as their own idea and present it as theirs. So that's very typical red flag when you notice that someone is copying someone else or taking someone else's ideas or saying something else that someone is saying without giving them credit or acknowledging where they were inspired from. What it is to me is a thievery corporation. It's a name of a band, I know, a musical group. And last night I was thinking, it came into my mind, thievery corporation. So, of course, the etymology of corporation is, the corpus, the body, and the corporation is the false body of thievery. So, the individuals that don't have a strong ethereal metaphysical architecture or connection to their spirit because the spirit has withdrawn from the vessel because there's not a conducive housing for it to be operating through, then they are on autopilot and going around like little parasites, scurrying, trying to get as much as they can for themselves, whatever that is: clout, celebration, finances, whatever. Just trying to take from anywhere they can find it. And for the people that are connected to the spirit and have a strong metaphysical architecture to house a large amount of their spirit here in this life incarnation, don't even think about operating like that. It's actually very easy to share, very easy to inspire each other and work with each other, and not to step on each other's heads, try to climb to the top of some non existent mountain. And so it's often surprising and, painful to individuals that are confused as to why it's like in a relationship with a narcissist empath. Why would this person see me and see how pure and like I'm coming from innocence and authenticity and love? How could they possibly try and, basically siphon the life out of me and just throw me in the trash with no regard. Well, they are incapable of even feeling the possibility of anything else because they're overtaken by that, it's a mind virus, but it also is it is a way of being. It's an ego. It's the way of operating from a lower octave nature. And we have a choice. We can work toward being more responsible stewards while we're here, or we cannot care at all. And what happens then is that we have these fields and there's emotional discharge, and people are either siphoning it out of people. Like I said earlier, the thievery corporation in the physical is very strong, and find it interesting that a lot of people pass it off as um, dark entities and archons when this type of behavior is actually celebrated and enabled by society. Unfortunately, it's often celebrated and encouraged for people to act like this and step on each other. It's a dog eat dog world, etc. So when a person is operating from that state, they do not have a proper housing for their spirit, and it withdraws. And through the life incarnation, they can either do work and get some of that spirit back, or they can just continue letting it degrade and go into further states of entropy. And no matter what, whether someone's field is in entropy or whether it's harmonized and balanced, it's the field of the physical. It's not the field of the spirit. So, whatever you identify with, wherever you're acting from, is what you're cultivating. And so, if you're concerned with maintaining the integrity only of what you need to do while you're here, when you are done with this life, there won't be anything left for your memory of this vessel to be. So if you're concerned with maintaining the integrity only of what you need to do while you're here, when you are done with this life, there won't be anything left for your memory of this vessel to be, quote unquote, uploaded to. It will just dissipate back into the greater field. Okay, back to the charge dissipation at the end of life of the physical, all of that memory, cellular memory, morphic resonant memory, will go back into the field, the greater field of this realm. And that could be potentially why, we have things crossing in our mind sometimes of picking up on strange lifetimes or memories or signatures of things. Could be the charge that's just layers upon layers upon layers that is being reused to continue building this realm. Maintaining the integrity only of what, no matter what, unfortunately, it's often celebrated and encouraged for people to act like this and step on each other. It's a dog eat dog world, etc. So when a person is operating from that state, they do not have a proper housing for their spirit, and it withdraws. And through the life incarnation, they can either do work and get some of that spirit back, or they can just continue letting it degrade and go into further states of entropy. And no matter what, whether someone's field is in entropy or whether it's harmonized and balanced, it's the field of the physical. It's not the field of the spirit. So, whatever you identify with, wherever you're acting from, is what you're cultivating. And so, if you're concerned with maintaining the integrity only of what you need to do while you're here, when you are done with this life, there won't be anything left for your memory of this vessel to be quote unquote uploaded to. It will just dissipate back into the greater field. Okay, back to the charge dissipation at the end of life of the physical, all of that memory, cellular memory, morphic resonant memory, will go back into the field, the greater field of this realm. And that could be potentially why, we have things crossing in our mind sometimes of picking up on strange lifetimes or memories or signatures of things. Could be the charge that's just layers upon layers upon layers that is being reused to continue building this realm. I imagine that if there is a dedication to cultivating a strong, coherent field of a higher octave frequency, then the dielectric core, the center of you where the spirit lives, is strong and is capable of housing that amount of light, that incorruptible light. So the goal could be throughout a life to maintain that ethereal architecture to keep a safe space for your spirit. And if you don't, and operate in the other ways I've been describing from the Thievery Corporation, then your spirit is probably adios and you're really not connected to it at all. So it doesn't matter what happens. It doesn't matter what happens either way, is what I'm saying. If it's strong or weak, the charge is going to dissipate at the end of life because it's the physical body's field. The spirit at that point, if there was a lot housed in at the end of life, withdraws back to spirit self, your greater spirit self, the greater luminance of that spiritual essence that you were born with, and either you kept with you or you lost some and you gained some back and then you lost some again. But either way, that spirit is incorruptible. That will not stay. That will not dissolve into the field. The thing is that either you get to experience living with more connection to your spirit, or you experience living making choices of how to maintain operating from an autopilot, parasitic, lower realm nature. And that is why we can see all around us in this world all of the individuals that aren't even aware that this is a thing to maintain a cultivation. There's not a lot of spirit driving the cars. It's like giving a child a project and they mess it up or destroy it. You are not going to give it again to the child, but you're not going to murder the child. You just let it do what it, go on with its life. But now this is how this individual is going to treat these things. So back to emotions, energy and motion, the emotional discharge. These free radicals, positive, negative charges, it doesn't matter if it's positive or negative. It's food for the narcissist, for the parasite, for the person, for that energy operating through the person. A narcissist doesn't care if you're crying because of sadness or crying because of bliss. They will siphon any bit of energy that they can. So, these positive and negative charges that are slipping out of our fields through different tears because we're not maintaining the integrity of it, it's all around. It can be picked up by anything, metaphysical or physical. It can be utilized to build intentionally and consciously, or it can just be stolen, everybody running around stealing from each other. And ironically, it just degrades that individual's architecture even more. By navigating that thievery corporation mentality, they don't gain it. They're not gaining in the way that if you want to maintain the connection to your spirit and be a good steward and allow more of that to come in so you can experience living in the human body with as much spirit. Like when people say the reincarnation of Christ consciousness or the Buddha nature, it's like drip line coming in little bits or in strong amounts, depending on the quality of the work that the person is doing. Then I was drinking my coconut water and I looked and it says harmless harvest. And I thought, what an appropriate label. So we have Thievery Corporation, which crazily enough, I looked up online. They're actually performing right now as I'm speaking in Los Angeles. That is a huge synchronicity and pushes me even more to release this video tonight. So, yeah, harmless harvest. How can we learn to cultivate energy and strength for ourselves, spiritual resilience, maintain that connection without taking, manipulating, stealing from another? And there's so many ways. We all have the capacity to feel a wellspring of love and inspiration from our own selves. We don't need to take validation, to take energy, to take whatever we think, whatever someone is envious or hateful or spiteful about someone else and they want to take it. You can do that for yourself. And that's a whole nother video about how to learn how to cultivate more of that for yourself, to become strong and coherent, independent and sovereign, so that all the way up into the end of life, you can experience living with the spiritual essence firmly in your center, in your dielectric core, in your 0 point. And you pull back from identifying from all the different aspects, from the senses, from, remember on the live I did the 12 construct matrices, all the 12 different 12 different sections of constructs. And then there's 7 layers deep, 7 stages, 7 gates, 7 octaves, 7 chakras. And then there's 5 senses, 5 digits. 5 is the interface. So when you pull yourself away from all those 5, 7, 12s and stay in the center and identify with that instead of everything else that's been laid upon you, programmed into you, and conditioned into you while you've been here, then at the end of your life, you have cultivated your sense of identity to who you really are, which is not this physical form, which is not any of those layers or veils. And that awareness, that focus, that identification, that knowing, that can stay and continue on with your spirit, or if you haven't figured out how not to identify with your lower nature and your ego, then that is where your awareness will continue. And like I said, the spirit is incorruptible. It's not going to dissolve. It either integrates fully. I mean, if it's integrated fully, those are the people that are like the walking masters. Or if it's completely gone, NPC, it doesn't matter. The spirit's incorruptible. It's about cultivating a proper and conducive housing or metaphysical architecture to hold more, or if you don't want to, less of the spirit. I don't know if there's anything else I want to share. I guess one last thing that's coming to mind is in Gnosticism, when Sophia withdrew her light from the realm after she came and witnessed what Yaldabaoth and the Demiurge and the Archons have been doing, and where they've been operating from the lower realms and the lower octaves. She withdrew her light back to the higher realms. So that can be applied to the smaller version of us. We either become Yaldabaoth or the Demiurge while we're here, or we integrate more of our Sophionic presence. So if you don't, then the light will withdraw. And if you do, the light will cultivated your sense of identity to who you really are, which is not this physical form, which is not any of those layers or veils. And that awareness, that focus, that identification, that knowing, that can stay and continue on with your spirit. Or if you haven't figured out how not to identify with your lower nature and your ego, then that is where your awareness will continue. And like I said, the spirit is incorruptible. It's not going to dissolve. It either integrates fully. I mean, if it's integrated fully, those are the people that are like the walking masters. Or if it's completely gone, NPC, it doesn't matter. The spirit's incorruptible. It's about cultivating a proper and conducive housing or metaphysical architecture to hold more, or if you don't want to, less of the spirit. I don't know if there's anything else I want to share. I guess one last thing that's coming to mind is in Gnosticism, when Sophia withdrew her light from the realm after she came and witnessed what Yaldabaoth and the Demiurge and the Archons have been doing, and where they've been operating from the lower realms and the lower octaves. She withdrew her light back to the higher realms. So that can be applied to the smaller version of us. We either become Yaldabaoth or the Demiurge while we're here, or we integrate more of our Sophionic presence. So if you don't, then the light will withdraw. And if you do, the light will integrate and help you along your way during this life. But either way, the light is incorruptible. It's the physical body's field that discharges and dissipates back into the greater field at death. Oh, I've been wanting to share this stuff for so long. I recently tried to, well, I did. I accomplished hanging up some of my artwork in a local shop. So that took a lot out of me. And the past couple of days, I've been resting and unable to make any videos. So I had to prepare for that for the last couple of weeks. And after it was done, I'm exhausted, but I just want to get this out so I can have a nice arc to follow my channel of my thought processes. And I'm happy that I took the time to articulate this, even though it was slow and kind of clunky at times. I like not reading and not just copying and pasting. I like to invite the authentic, essential spirit of me to be able to come through. and to keep that channel clean and clear and pure. So let me know what you think in the comments, and I look forward to making another video soon. Take care.